Okay, ich glaube, wir sind live. Herzlich willkommen an alle Zuschauer oder ja, an unsere Community, die da ist für unser Live Global Banking Webinar. Yes, sorry, it was supposed to be, it's going to be in English, the webinar. So I will switch to English, my apologies. So welcome to the community for joining the Staatenlos and Denationalized webinar about global banking solutions. We'll give it another minute or so just to have a few more people join. But the reason we're doing it in English is because we have a big community in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, but we actually have clients all over the world, all over Europe, internationally. And so banking is a global aspect of flag theory. So it's going to be in English, and we assume that all of you can follow along and it'll be good. And of course, if you have questions at any point, contact myself, Xenia@staatenlos.ch. I'm joined here today by Eric, our banking partner, and of course, Christoph. They'll speak in a minute. We'll just give it a few more seconds, and then I'll do a quick intro. I guess we're 2 minutes in. So welcome, everyone, to our banking webinar. And banking is an important aspect of flag theory that we want to talk to you guys today about. And we have clients that have very unique businesses that are considered high risk, whether it be gambling or certain adult industries, or even the traveling industry is considered high risk. And so those clients know the challenges of banking. But we also have very standard clients that have online businesses, coaching businesses, that struggle to get bank accounts or that repeatedly get rejected. And then we have people that have a US LLC and just want a full bank. They don't want a fintech bank, an online bank. They want a full banking solution. So this webinar really speaks to anybody and everyone. And we're going to have an alternative for our community for proper banking solutions, no matter what your business is, so that's one aspect of your flag theory life that you can rely on and know is just working and functioning. So as I said before, my name is Xenia. I've been on the Staatenlos team for 3.5 years, working with Christoph. Eric from Finstride is our partner for quite a while now, and he is excellent in helping with banking solutions. So Christoph, I'll quickly give the word to you before we introduce Eric, for you to Christoph to welcome our community as well.
Yeah, welcome to this webinar, this time in English. Actually, me and Eric have a joint history. We studied at the same university, politics and management, at the University of Constance in border to Switzerland. So we have similar upbringings. However, Eric chose the more career path. He first went to London, worked for many banks, has a lot of expertise in banking. Banking was a core subject for me as well, but rather differently. I was traveling around the world. I wrote my first book about banking, like the first book I sold, 2016, was an encyclopedia of like the best offshore accounts you could open. That's still available. Of course, it's updated since then. But in this webinar, we have a bit of another focus. It's mostly about global banking solutions, mostly business solutions, I think. And not only banks, but also payment systems. So a lot of questions are about providers like PayPal and Stripe. And I often have the impression that people think that's the only companies on the market, although there is hundreds of other opportunities. And Eric and his team are very well versed in these topics, and they can help you get a lot of other options as well for your American LLC, but also many other entities around the world. So I think I give the word to Eric to go forward with the banking presentation we have prepared. And we'll drop the one or other question in between. And of course, you're invited to ask questions as well. Just write them in the chat, and I think we will go on to that questions after the talk.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Christoph. Thanks, Xenia, for that quick introduction. Maybe just from my side. So, hi, everyone. Some from the Staatenlos community might already know me, some might not. But basically, I'm originally from Germany as well, born and raised in Munich. And then, as Christoph said, we used to study at the same university, even though at different times. And then I went into banking in London. And us at Finstride, so we're basically a team of 6 people. I'm the only German, the rest is from the UK. We basically all met in London in banking and banking related fields. And we were quite aware that already, working in London in a corporate job in a declining Western country is probably not going to be the best path to be on. So we decided that we've also seen an increase in regulation in banking when it comes to onboarding customers from higher risk businesses or with offshore structures. So we said, okay, maybe there's a way how we can, live abroad, work abroad, and take, that Staatenlos mentality, which I've obviously been exposed to, quite early, as I've heard of Christoph in my university already. And also at the same time, continue doing what we're really good at, which is banking. So we started FinStride around 2.5-3 years ago with a focus on complex transactions. And really, when we talk about complex transactions, I want to put it into 3 main categories where we really exceed, where we really help our customers on a day-to-day basis. Number 1 is everything in the offshore space. So there's a couple of points you want to make sure you're doing right when it comes to banking when you're having an offshore company, because initially, especially in the first years of Staatenlos, it was very easy with the banking because there were providers like Revolut and Wise who would just open an account for everyone. But what we've seen, because actually one of my co-founders has been working for Revolut for 4 years, he's been building the banking partnerships for Revolut. He's seen that, as companies like Revolut and Wise grow in popularity, they're also getting more mature banking partners. And these more mature banking partners then have lower risk acceptance, which means that, these kind of companies also start to, go against higher risk businesses as well as offshore businesses. So one of the core areas we work in is everything in the offshore space. So when you have an easy offshore structure like a USLC or Dubai entity, or you have even more complex one with holding structures and multiple entities underneath, it is more and more tough to get the right bank accounts, especially when your company doesn't have any economic substance and you're really just trying to have that structure in order to, move funds. So for our customers, when it comes to offshore banking, we help them to find the right bank accounts for their entities, as well as for the individual level. Because what we also see a lot is that if people establish offshore companies and they leave their home country, for example, Germany, it is not advisable to move all of your funds back to German bank accounts. It's really good to be diversified here and have, bank accounts as well as brokerage accounts in other countries, ideally outside of the EU. So on the offshore side, that's really something where we've, I would say have a lot of our clients is definitely one of the main fields. The second field where we do help a lot of customers also from Staatenlos is the higher risk space. So there are certain industries which are considered higher risk by banks. And you have the obvious ones, right? You have the gaming, the gambling, the adult, everything that's, to do with trading or crypto, right? These are quite often very obvious higher risk industries. But as Xenia said, there's also higher risk industries which you often don't know are high risk industries, such as, everything in the luxury space or traveling or alternative medicines, where customers are often surprised that they don't get bank accounts and they're often being denied by banks. And then they come to us or to Staatenlos and they're quite surprised that they're actually in a high risk industry, especially in combination with an offshore company. Then you're on a higher risk scale, by the way. So the higher risk space is also where we really help our customers with everything payments, which means we help them to set up bank accounts in the right jurisdictions with the right payment rails they need, right? Some of them might need euro payments, some US payments, some need more exotic currencies. But we also do card processing, which is basically when you want to accept card payments of your clients or alternative assets like crypto. Which really brings me to the third key area where we really support our clients. As crypto is growing as an asset class, as well as a payment method, when we look at stable coins, we also do really help our clients everything crypto. And here we go both directions. So we do have clients in the crypto space, maybe a layer 1 blockchain or a project that has received funding in crypto and they want to move that into the traditional banking system. But we also have an increase of customers who come to us and say, hey, I do want to actually invoice my clients in crypto, or I want to give them a payment option with crypto on our website, but I don't really know how I'm going to do that. I don't really want to be exposed to the volatility. I want to stay compliant. There's more and more regulation, especially with MiCA in Europe. Or we have high net worth individuals or, just people who have bought crypto very early on who say, hey, I do want to cash out that crypto, but I might not have all the receipts anymore because that exchange I bought it in the past doesn't exist anymore. Or I want to rather cash it out for a better rate, maybe in a country with better regulation, because Europe's actually been quite restrictive recently. So basically these three areas are our key expertise, everything in the offshore banking space, everything in the higher risk space, and everything with alternative assets like crypto, where we really help our customers on a day-to-day basis to find the right payment flows, design the payment flows with them, and then help with the onboarding to the bank to make sure that they're being accepted. And pretty much a year ago, Christoph, we two got in touch. I think it's pretty much a year ago. And we had a conversation about our services, and you said, yes, that's actually a big need for our customers. And ever since, we've been working on easily hundreds of customers from Staatenlos who've come to us. So maybe my question to you is, obviously, I've lined out now what we've seen from an institutional side by working in banks, that regulation has increased when it comes to crypto, when it comes to offshore companies, and when it comes to high risk companies. But you've obviously been running Staatenlos since over 10 years. So it would be interesting to hear what your experience is. Did you see an increase in regulation as well? Is it tougher for your clients to get bank accounts? What's your view on this?
Yeah, I think it goes in both directions. On the one hand, you're right. It gets tougher. As you explained, many banks like Wise or Revolut just change their banking partners and get more strict on certain things. Like I had, I think, 5 business accounts canceled in the last 5 years. Every year I have to reliably look for a new business account. But and that's a positive development, there's much more options. Yeah. There are so many online banks now. It's pretty easy in some jurisdictions like Lithuania in Europe, or also some offshore jurisdictions, to open your own banking entity. And that gives a lot of options on the market. Not all are good, some are scam, but many of them bring a lot of options to the table. And when we started the LLC business 7 years ago, there was basically only Wise as an option to get a European IBAN and nothing else. And now there is well over a dozen options to get European banking for American offshore LLC, for example. Yeah. So it really goes in both directions. On one hand, it gets tougher, but on the other hand, there's much more options. So generally, even if you declined with multiple banks or canceled your bank accounts, you are not completely debanked, you still have other options. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you're right? It does get a bit more tough and you have more options, which probably is a good reason for our service, because I feel like that customers do have, on the one hand, they want to achieve something, but they don't really know how to do that anymore because there's so many options, so many providers. You said already, some of them are scam. Some of them have pretty tough onboardings, because what we see is the banking providers that we prefer are obviously banking providers with a higher risk profile, who also then really accept offshore clients or higher risk clients. But what always happens is that you have to go through a enhanced due diligence process, especially when you have a US LLC with a higher risk business, or an offshore structure with a higher risk business. So for many of our clients, it's also just not that straightforward to answer these questions correctly and make sure that they pass these KYCs, even though there might be a lot of options. So we really help them to find the right solution from a pricing perspective, from a payment perspective of what they need. But then we also ensure that the onboarding goes smoothly, because that's something that really got harder. On another
it's
note,
very hard to find all those options. Sorry to interrupt you, but the standard options like Wise, Revolut, you make a Google search and you get them. You ask AI and you get them. But there's so many other providers you just don't find with the standard internet research, and that's also where really you get in, because basically all the nice sweet spots, the nice fintechs who are maybe new on the market but reliably easy to open and bring a good service to the clients. Yeah.
Yeah, and another reason why it does get a bit, I would say, why there is so many options nowadays is because through EMIs, which are electric money institutes, you can basically piggy bank on another bank's banking as a service license. So what happens quite a lot is that payment companies build on the infrastructure of another payment company. For example, us at FinStride, that's a Q4 project. We're actually going to launch our own higher risk banking solution as well, where we can onboard a lot of clients that do need European rails, that do need crypto rails, that do need international rails. We'll have around 17 currencies. So that's just a good proof. But I've heard that you're also exploring into that direction. You said that you have something upcoming there. I don't know if you want to maybe talk about that, but you mentioned that you invested in a payments company as well.
Yeah, I'm invested in multiple fintech companies. I'm invested in certain US startups from the payment space. I'm also invested into a Cypriot bank more substantially. which is also doing a lot of banking stuff related to crypto, also related to offshore. So the plan is to get this bank opening SEPA accounts for US LLCs in the future as well. Will still take probably half a year, but then we have another good banking solution for our clients. But of course, we're happy to work with you on your project deeper together as well.
Perfect. Before I go into the presentation, where I'm going to line out a bit what our process is, what you can expect if you come to Staatenlos and you say, hey, I actually do want to talk to the guys from Finstride around banking, maybe they could help me. Maybe just to quickly touch on the flag theory, because Xenia, you mentioned that, and it's quite interesting because obviously I was aware of Staatenlos since my early uni days, and I've always followed it. But when I went into London, into banking, I've actually worked with a lot of high net worth individuals who did not know about the flag theory, but they always lived by it quite automatically because they understood I need to be diversified when it comes to banking, when it comes to where are my assets, when it comes to where to incorporate my company. But I think what a lot of customers still underestimate is, okay, they get their banking for their offshore structure. So they've opened maybe a company in Dubai or in the US or wherever. And then they do still remit most of their money back to their home country. So thinking of the flag theory, where's banking for you, and what do you recommend to your clients when it comes to, holding your money diversified around the world? What's your view on that?
Yeah, like you said, it's good to diversify. It's okay to have some assets in your home country, but like for Germany, I wouldn't advise people to hold more than like 50K in their typical bank account, and rather move their money offshore. However, it's not only about the bank account; it's really about the holistic strategy, combining the bank account openings with a second residency. So maybe there is no more information exchange with Germany, or even a second citizenship. So you're completely out of the scope of your home country chasing your assets. Yeah, for example, I purchased last year a Vanuatu passport. I have an address in Paraguay, and that can still give me a Singapore bank, for example. EU would be more difficult with such a setup, but there's still plenty of other offshore banks where you can get a bank account in. So generally, of course, we advise our clients, especially if they have the money, to go to this typical financial jurisdictions like Singapore, Liechtenstein, the Channel Islands, but also more exotic options. Yeah, one of our most requested service in the last years is bank account opening in Georgia, and we open a lot of accounts remotely there. It's not a typical offshore or financial center, but it has not the worst banking in a relatively stable, financially set country. Yeah, so that could be a real option for especially people who don't have that much money, because like Singapore and Liechtenstein banks, they want a couple of 100,000 normally to get a good bank account. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, because when we help our clients, we in the first step, and I'll get to that obviously in a second, but we really try to understand what's their situation, because there's such a high number of bank accounts. By now we're working with over 120 global partner banks, so it's really important for everyone to understand that when they come to us, that we're not just going to recommend a single bank account to everyone, that we really look at their situation, we understand what's their setup, what is their finances, what's their payment flows. And I think that's something that's often underestimated. So we really look at the flow of funds, what are they trying to achieve, and then we build the banking around them. And that is not always just the banking. We're really looking at the entire flow of funds, which means is what is the right banking for your business entity? What is maybe a main account where you want to hold your funds? Maybe you want to have some other diversification with some accounts that are better when it comes to reporting. Maybe they're outside of CRS, or they can, do something very cheap. Maybe you want to settle certain crypto payments or card payments into that bank account. And then how do you send those funds to your private accounts, which are also offshore? And then you also have an option with us to, diversify into crypto or brokerage accounts, etc. So we really look at the entire situation of the client, and then we propose them the banking options. But I think this is probably a good moment to get into the presentation, because here I'm actually lining out exactly how we work.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, keep asking questions. We'll be answering the questions once we get through the presentation, so don't be shy. And then 2, just to kind of also make our community understand, because in a way, banking and the system and compliance is rigid and outdated. And with what we have with Eric and his team is truly a partner that understands your situation, right? A normal bank will not understand the flag theory, life of a perpetual travelers, and the challenges we face. So the amazing thing here in this partnership and the service that we offer is somebody who already knows what you're doing, who knows your background, who knows flag theory, and can really help figure out the best
Yeah, I
solution.
mean, that's a very good point of Xenia. Yeah, if you say to bank, I don't have any residency everywhere, they will directly decline you.
Yeah.
For Eric, you can tell that, and then he still gives you the solutions. You need some kind of residency, some kind of setup, and we can help with many setups then again. But once you have that, then you have a lot of options, yeah. And that's a good thing to have an intermediary to that banking world over Eric, and then he now tells us more about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point from both of you. So maybe worth mentioning. So we're not in corporate London anymore. I'm finding myself right now in Bogota myself. I'm going to be next week in Buenos Aires. So me, as well as the entire Finstride team, we're also traveling around the world, living by the flag theory, and really taking our learnings from our time in banking and asset management in London and translating that into this approach, which we think is definitely the smartest approach for designing a more free life. But that's probably better for Christoph and Staatenlos on helping you with this. We're just responsible for the banking side. So yeah, maybe a quick introduction and diving a bit into what you can expect when you work with us. So as I already said, we're Finstride. We're a team of 6, so it's not just me. You have an entire team that is working around the clock with you. We have people in different time zones. We have still someone in London. We have people in Asia, and we've got the main bulk of the team currently in South America. So there's always someone available. But what is really the complexity? And I think I've touched already a bit on that. But in reality, when we look at banking, there are more and more options. So you're looking at a huge jungle of options, but at the same time, increasing regulation when it comes to anti-money laundering, so AML, when it comes to KYCs, when it comes to certain asset classes like crypto. So we just see that, it is tougher for companies to find the right bank account. And there's multiple reasons for that. One of the reasons that we really see is that when you have an offshore company is that, the banks that used to work in the past, they are being restricted by opening accounts for these offshore entities, and they often close them as well. So when we look at the typical providers like Revolut and Wise, or I don't want to go into too many now, but these typical banking solutions that everyone knows, they are being internally briefed to not open accounts for offshore companies anymore, which results in more and more declines. And we have a lot of customers coming to us who say, we don't know why, but we've just got declined. Or even worse, you might get offboarded. Not every entity is getting offboarded, but what we see is that when our clients trigger a certain, risk profile by, sending a high transaction or transacting with certain parties, there's being a team that looks into it, and if they see that this is USLC or an offshore structure, then they're sometimes being offboarded with absolutely no reason. So for every Staatenlos customer, the complexity for you might, just be that you have an offshore entity, and that complexity increases if you're in a higher risk space. So basically, we're just helping with everything that has to do with you having issues with banking or payments or, anything card acquiring. So we do have quite a broad range of customers, which I've already touched on. So we have, customers who just have an international offshore structure. You might be UBO from Germany. Your company is in the US, in the UK, in Dubai, and then you may be, you may be having a residence in the third country. We also do work with a lot of companies that are just, in the higher risk industries. I've already said it. If you're in the gaming, gambling, adult, trading, gold, luxury, everything in alternative medicine space, this is definitely a relevant topic for you. Or basically just clients who do send very large transactions have these issues as well as, and this is probably also very important for Staatenlos, customers who do set up structures in order to move money around. So when you have a structure purely to protect your assets and you don't have an economic substance in your company, it is really tough, especially when you are working with jurisdictions like Panama or more exotic countries. So our customers are basically from a very wide range. They're coming from, offshore companies to touching crypto and, certain higher risk industries, as well as just, being in a high risk industry themselves. So what is the process and how can we actually help? So the first step is that whenever you want to have a conversation with us, it's really important to know that, first of all, there's a free consultation. So you can always reach out to Staatenlos and they will get you in contact with us. Typically, you'll get a booking link and you'll jump on a meeting with me, where I'm trying to understand what is the situation, is there actually a way that we can help you, and what might be the reason why you're coming to us, what might be the reason why you might have been declined by banks, or just really understanding what's the situation. If you then say you want to go ahead, we're going to send you a survey, which you're going to fill out hopefully by the best possible means you have. And in this survey, we're really just trying to understand what is the flow of funds. So really understanding, where do you get your payments from? How does your business operate? What is your nature of business? Where's your business incorporated? And then a couple of stats that we just need in terms of, the size of the payments and maybe some things you don't want to share on the call, so that we get the best possible understanding of how your business functions and what is the flow of funds and how we can help you. The second part of the survey then really looks at, what do you want from the bank? Because obviously we work with 120 different partner banks and we want to understand, okay, which banks can onboard you, but there's also certain requirements that you might have in terms of, okay, so what's the regulation like? What is the, what I need, maybe a card, a business card. I maybe need certain currencies because maybe I'm transacting a lot with the UAE. So I might want to have local rails for AED payments, or I'm dealing a lot with Asia. So I want to have a lot of Asian local rails so I don't have to pay that much conversion fees. Or I actually do not want to have any exchange with the European Union or Germany. So I need a bank that is, maybe better from a regulation perspective, maybe outside of CRS. So we really try to understand, what is your situation? What does your business do? And what is, the financial side of things? Because as Christoph mentioned, not everyone has the same amount of money to pay for a bank. So obviously you might be, limited when it comes to this. And then we also want to understand, what do you need of the bank? And once we've understood this, my team in the background will go and find out, or basically look at, what are the best banks, and we'll go and talk to them directly. And this is where we can really help you. And this is a step that you can't really do, because we'll go directly to our banking partners and we'll say, okay, this is the profile of the company. This is what they want to achieve. Please, could you tell us if this is if this is a business that's relevant to you? So typically, let's say you gave us all this information and we're talking with 25 to 30 banks, and then they can say very, very transparently, yes, this is within our risk appetite, or this is without our risk appetite. This is how we can mitigate basically you going from account to account and being denied. And more importantly, this is how we can mitigate you opening an account and then after a couple of transactions being denied. Because what often happens with banks is that, for example, these typical EMIs, they will onboard you very quickly without doing too much due diligence, but then they monitor the transactions over the first 6 months. And then once there's a transaction that they don't like, they block the transactions, they request certain information from you, and you can only get your money back once you give them this information. And then typically after they close your account, so you're in this very awkward situation where your money is blocked, and then once you give them all the information, you're still being offboarded. So basically, we're mitigating that. Typically, the banks talk quite transparently to us because we have, around 20 to 30 clients every week. So we bring quite a lot of volume to the banks, and we have very established partnerships through our time in London and through our time at Finstride. So then these banks come to us and they say, okay, yes or no, right? So let's say we come with around 10 to 15 possible banks as an option for you back. We'll say to them, okay, we'll only take the best 5 offers to the client. So we make them tender out basically the process, because typically there's a pricing they give you on the website, but because we bring a lot of volume, we can get you a custom pricing. So we typically try to push the pricing a bit lower by just tendering out that process. Being completely transparent, if you're a freelancer or you have a USLC and you're making medium to lower volumes, maybe like 10 to 20K a month, you might get a better pricing, but it won't move the needle that much. If you actually run a pretty big business, so if you're actually having a platform or like an online service or, card acquiring or something where you actually are quite, where you actually need a custom pricing, we can also go in and really help you negotiate that with the banks a lot. Just depends on if that's something you want. That will just, take a bit longer then, because we're making a proper sales cycle with the bank. Once we basically have that final pricing and the offer from the banks, sorry, I'm still at the process, but we'll get to this. Then we're basically coming back to you and proposing these options. That typically takes, a half an hour to 1 hour call, where we're really talking about, all the options that you have, talking about the pros and cons, and helping you choose the right bank account or bank accounts. Typically, it's multiple for your entities and some for your private person. and really help you choose them. Typically in the first call, we find everything. But yeah, if you need another one, we can always include more options. And then this is when, for us, the real work begins. That's when we start the introduction to the bank and we help with the onboarding. And as I mentioned before, if you're an offshore business or a higher risk business, or you're on board with, one of our banking partners, typically you go through a process which is called enhanced due diligence, which simply means that all these questions that they, need to know, they will ask before. So it will take, a week to 2 weeks for us to answer all of these questions. We need to show them the flow of funds. Sometimes we cooperate with Staatenlos on getting certain documents from your company or from your residency. But we basically do everything we can on our side to make you not work, but really do the onboarding from our side and make sure that you're getting onboarded, as quick as possible and with the lowest effort at that bank. And then once you've been onboarded, we have a direct contact with every single bank, where you're typically in a Telegram chat or WhatsApp chat or via email, and we're staying involved, which means that, if there might be any questions in the future, you can always reach out to us, and we're helping with all the questions that might come up.
And I just wanted to add that it's really important to be honest with banks, right? I get a lot of clients that always ask me, what can I share? Do I share this? And so, of course, it's important to be honest, but sometimes it matters how you word things. And some things are better not to be shared. And so in working with a partner with us and Eric from Finstride, you can completely be honest with Eric, and then he can find a way of wording it and submitting the package to the banks in a way that's comfortable. So if you're uncomfortable because you don't know what to say to the bank, how to word it, here's really a partner that can help you, really an expert. He's very experienced, that can help you do that. Because the biggest challenges for clients is that they share things that don't need to be shared, or they share great things, but they word it in such a way that it's confusing to the banks. And that's why they get rejected, not because of their business or the nature of what they do, but because of how they apply to banks. And I see that.
Yeah, I had the example myself last time with a bank, because I just used the English word wrong. I said I'm not getting commissions, I'm getting kickbacks. And apparently kickback in American is very negative. And that led the bank to basically decline my account in the beginning, until I made that clear.
Exactly, yeah. Very good point, Xenia. So yes, please always be as transparent as you can on the survey and with us. Typically, you'll also speak to my partner, William, who's doing the onboardings. And he's been, as I said, working for many years for Revolut. He knows exactly what every single banking partner wants to hear and whatnot. Obviously, we're going to be always transparent, because what we don't want is give them false information and later on you have issues. But as Xenia said, there are certain things about the wording. So with us, I always say it's like with a doctor, it's really the time to be honest and tell what the situation is, so that we can make the right choice. There's really no reason to hide anything in front of us, because otherwise we're going to maybe make the wrong choice when it comes to the banks. We really need to know everything. But yes, we're going to help you with the entire onboarding process, and that includes the AML and KYC questions. And a great example is, for example, a lot of customers get asked as a first question, okay, so where do you plan to send payments to? And then they're thinking about, okay, well, I have customers here, I have suppliers there, and they name, okay, I want to send them to Dubai and to this country, and they name the longest list of countries. And then what a bank does, the next step is, okay, so why are you sending payments to all of these countries? And you're finding yourself in the next round of questions, which is just not necessary, because you want to give a bank always the information they need, but not necessarily more. Because if you just tell them, oh, I'm maybe dealing with some German clients and some clients in the US, that's typically enough. And then after you maybe provide a statement, or we help you to provide the correct invoice, that doesn't mean that later on you can't send to all these other jurisdictions. It's just making your life a lot easier. So this is a great example for what Xenia just mentioned. And that obviously goes down even further when you're in a higher risk industry. So when you're dealing with, crypto, or you're in the adult space, on the gambling space, this gets a lot more tricky. So yeah, this slide, as I said, is basically just, so what are our services? So when do you come to us? So basically everything banking. If you're a customer of Staatenlos and you have issues with banking, or you want to maybe diversify when it comes to bank accounts, again, we're doing everything in offshore banking, everything for higher risk industries. So if you think that you're in a higher risk industry and you're not sure, or you know that you are, or you're getting declined all the time and you think that you might be, feel free to reach out. when you want to diversify when it comes to private banking. So, okay, let's say you have your offshore setup with Staatenlos, you have your second residency, but you're still remitting all of the money back to your home country, and you'd rather maybe diversify with some UK bank accounts or some Swiss bank accounts or some bank accounts in the Caymans or the US. That's also a good time to reach out to us. We obviously have also more exotic bank accounts, but yeah. And then when you have complex ownership structures, or you maybe need, banking as a service, that's also where we can help. A lot of your customers, and this is why I included this slide, have exposure to cryptocurrencies. I know, Christoph, that you've been quite early in the crypto space already. I remember from a podcast that you even wrote your bachelor's or master thesis about Bitcoin? I don't know. So you were very lucky there, being very early. But yes, so everything in the crypto space, that's something where we can help with. So if you have a business and you want to offer crypto payments to your clients, or you want to invoice them, but you want to do that in a way so that you're not exposed to cryptocurrency and it's just getting settled into your bank account, you don't want to touch crypto, right? That's when you come to us. If you want to cash out crypto in a better jurisdiction than you, and trust me, there's a lot of better jurisdictions than you currently, or you're just, maybe having an issue with cashing out on a traditional exchanges because you lost the proofs, that's where we can help. And we also do have a lot of very, I would say, unique cases where people come to us in the crypto space. I think actually, maybe let me mention this, Christoph, the first customer that you've sent us was actually a crypto transaction, and this one is worth mentioning. So if you ask yourself, can Finstride help? This might be very complex. Always come to us. This is really our specialty, because the first client you've sent us was someone who had a lot of Bitcoin. I think it was in the multiple millions, and they've lost proof. And they also wanted to borrow against their Bitcoin because they thought that this was still, a good asset to hold, which turned out to be true. I mean, right now we have a bit of a sell-off, but generally we're at all-time highs. So he said, I want to purchase real estate in South Africa, but I do not want to sell my Bitcoin. I want to borrow against it. So what we've done is that we've supported the entire process of taking the Bitcoin as a collateral, so basically as a bond, and helping him with a fund in London to borrow against that, where he then got the amount that he needed for the real estate into stable coins. And then we've used one of our partners, which was an OTC desk outside of the European Union. I believe it was a Singapore OTC desk we used. It's a year ago. For those who don't know, OTC desk is basically an over-the-counter trade, which means that you're not throwing your asset on the market. You're actually getting it at a better execution price at a different partner who's also trading OTC. So this is how institutions basically trade larger amounts of, crypto, for example. So we basically made an OTC trade where we converted the stable coins that he borrowed against the Bitcoin to South African rand, which was then settled into the account of the person who sold the real estate in South Africa. So that was a very interesting one, because without even selling his Bitcoin, your client was able to acquire a piece of real estate in South Africa without ever touching the banking system, because all that he's done is put his Bitcoin down as a collateral, got stable coins in return, and then those stable coins were converted into the South African rand and settled directly into the account of the seller of the real estate. So nowhere on paper he's actually ever cashed out that crypto. He's never touched the banking system, and he got still his farm in South Africa. So that's maybe an interesting one to mention. So whenever you ask yourself, can Finstride help? We probably can.
What's the interest rate on this bonds on Bitcoin, this Bitcoin collateral? So how much do you have to pay back?
So it's an interesting question. So I think the entire cost he had was below 2% on the entire transaction. The interest rate was probably was likely packed to the interest rate back then, so it was probably quite high. But we structured it in a way, and this is where he was mainly talking to the fund, so that Bitcoin would have to fall over 70%, so that he would get liquidated. So we tried to structure it quite safe. I think his interest rate was somewhere in that current interest rate that you're paying, somewhere between 3 and 5%. That's something I would have to look up. It's quite a while ago, but I remember that on the entire transaction, he paid below 2%.
Yeah, that's very good. Don't sell your Bitcoin, just hold them and get a loan on them, so to speak.
Yeah, and it was definitely lower than the price appreciation that we've seen in the last 12 months. So it was definitely the right trade there.
That was a really fun example of the first client and the challenges they had. So as for a community, as you can see, we can get as complex as you need for business and private, or even as simple as you need. Say you have an LLC, you keep getting rejected. You don't know if it's your business or how you send the application. So it's just showing the broad range of clients that we can help, from complex crypto transactions to basic business accounts and even private solutions.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't even need to be like an offshore entity. Even if it's like a German GmbH, of course, they can help with banking, especially if it's high risk. But even if not, even nowadays, regulated countries from high tax jurisdictions can have issues with banking. I experienced that quite a lot as well. Or, I mean, just strategically, I mean, many people don't know, but of course, you can have a non-EU bank account for a German GmbH to just maybe have less risk for the German Finanzamt seizing your assets, yeah? So for all
Or
those
pricing.
that's great as well. Yeah.
Pricing is often a big issue as well, because a lot of, I would say brick and mortar banks often have very, very uncompetitive pricing when it comes to sending payments internationally. Typically, they charge you pretty high fee on converting from euro into whatever currency you want to settle into, and then they send it via SWIFT, which takes forever. I mean, SWIFT typically takes like 2 to 3 days, and when you are unlucky and you send it on a Friday, then you have to wait until Monday, so it's been sent. So we've really touched a lot on being off-boarded or higher risk, or just not, getting the right banking solution for your entity. But really, a lot is also, just a better flow of funds or a better execution and a better price. Because recently we had a customer from you guys who had a German entity, a German GmbH, but he wanted to send payments to China, and quite large payments to China in the Chinese yuan. So we actually helped him to set up with a bank that had local Chinese details, which means that now we can basically transact with China in real time. You can compare that to SEPA payments, right? In the EU, when you're sending SEPA payments, it only takes a couple of hours until it arrives, sometimes 1 day, and you're not having the conversion fee. So now we can basically transact with China in their local currency in almost real time. It's not exactly real time, it is always a couple of hours. But what's not happening anymore is that his euros are converted and then sent via SWIFT, where he first pays a high percentage on the conversion, and then second the SWIFT fee, and then third it takes long. So it might also make sense to reach out to us if you just want a better execution on your banking and you're just waiting too long or you're paying too high prices. That's also where we can help, of course. Gets more important when it comes to card payments, but so when you have too high fees on your card payments or your banking, then that's where we can help. Before we get into the questions, just really want to round it up with the team. So I'm basically the head of revenue and finances. So I'm on the sales side. I'm doing all the investment portfolios for our clients as well. So I'm basically the one who you're going to be dealing with in the early stages. And then we have Will. He's our head of banking. So once you basically filled out the survey, you're dealing with William on choosing the right banks, on onboarding with the right banks. We've got Alan. You're probably not going to meet Alan. He's more in the back end. He's our head of strategy. So he's really doing everything on the social media. So if you want to follow us, we have our website, finstride.services. We also have our restructuring arm and our Instagram, which is called Redomiciled, where you can follow us. There you'll see all the content. We got O'Neill. He's basically our head of business advisory. So he helps more on the legal side with things when it comes to more complex projects, when we work with platforms, etc. So maybe less relevant to you. And then Leon is our head of digital assets. So he's specialized on everything crypto. He's been working for many years in the crypto space. He's actually been the head of research at OnChain AG in Switzerland, where he's leading a research team as well. And then we've got James, our account manager, who basically just, makes sure that you're getting an answer every single time you have one after in the chat. So if you have issues with the banks, etc. So that's it with my presentation. I guess now the next step, I assume, would be to go into the questions, except you two have something.
Unless Christoph has some things to say, I'll bring up some of the questions here. Rob is asking, what about AMLA Frankfurt? I'm assuming it's a general question about what that means for us and the banking system. Christoph?
Like the new authority, which they built up in Frankfurt, anti-money laundering, which has a lot of rights to seize accounts and so on. Of course, that's connected to this, what we discussed about. So maybe Eric can tell us his take on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I'm not 100% sure what the question means, but I think, yes, we see in the EU and in Germany just an increase in regulation when it comes to banking. when it comes to onboardings, when it comes to controlling larger transactions, so everything AML, when you have a higher risk business, when you have an offshore business, or when you're dealing with alternative assets like crypto. So yeah, the direction is quite clear. It's going to get harder, not easier. As Christoph said, there's more options out there. So you can definitely mitigate that with, this high amount of new providers. And, we're living in a more digital world. So you can, onboard with banks all over the world. You can work remote and set up a company with Christoph and mitigate those risks. But yes, in Germany and in the EU, we're definitely heading towards more regulation, towards tougher regulation when it comes to banking and crypto, etc. So if you're concerned about that, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's often a question of strategy. Yeah, sometimes it might be wise to avoid offshore structures. Just choose to go again into the European Union. There's still a lot of completely tax-free structures within the European Union, and then you're more like an onshore entity. You have accounting, of course, but then you get easier banking as well. And sometimes it makes more sense to have offshore entity, but maybe don't have SEPA banking then, but just rely on better international transfers, and that doesn't need to be SWIFT, as Eric said.
Yeah, we always say money in the bank belongs to the bank and not you. So it's important to have good partners and diversify your strategy, right? And if you can avoid the EU and that makes sense because of the increased regulations, and that's a great way to do it. We also have our Paraguay residency, where many people get Paraguay residency and can then open up crypto and stock exchanges with that residency and kind of avoid information exchange and EU regulations. But like Christoph said, we still need European banking, and in some cases it's unavoidable or even beneficial. In that case, there's still good structures to be used for that as well, always understanding the total risk. Next question, prop trading ?
Yeah, again, interesting question. So in terms of prop trading, it's definitely a higher risk industry. So what we see is that everything in the trading space, in the FX space, when you deal with gold or jewelry, and also if you have a prop trading company or if you do prop trading, you are often considered a higher risk entity. Less so if you're not an offshore entity. So if you would do prop trading with your German GmbH, or a structure in a country that you live in, that's probably less of an issue. But you're definitely considered a higher risk client. So if you have a US LLC or even a more complex offshore structure, that's where you're going to run into issues, especially when the prop trading is in crypto, because we obviously see a large rise in prop trading companies in the crypto space. So if you're doing prop trading and you're looking to diversify here with your banking options for your entity, that's definitely a good fit. I assume that's a question if this is a fit, because
Okay. I would appreciate suggestions as to what bank, where to get a business account for US LLC, Wise shut me down. And if you're our client, we actually have a list of banking partnerships that we work with some instructions in terms of what residencies work and how to apply. I don't know if Christoph or Eric have any other specific suggestions as well.
We have 5 partner banks now for our clients where they can easily open an account. We cannot guarantee anything, but we have detailed instructions how to make it work. And if nothing works, then we still have Eric with a multitude of other options. So it's definitely possible to get good business bank. Like I said, I was canceled with my LLC for multiple banks, including Wise. They just closed my account down after a while. But there's other options. I both have US and European SEPA banks giving me a good business account, even for my line of business, which is pretty special for many banks.
Yeah, I mean, the Wise ones are interesting because we see kind of two directions with Wise. We see Wise closing a lot of US LLC accounts, and we're also seeing Wise closing a lot of higher risk businesses. However, we're working with all of them. We're working with only offshore companies and companies in the high risk space, and our Wise account is still kicking about, and we don't understand why. So Wise is an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, this is exactly the right approach here. When you say, hey, my Wise account got closed, I would like some more options. That's really where you should reach out to Staatenlos and then get in touch with us. As I described or tried to really bring across in this call, is our service is very bespoke. We're really trying to find you the best solution for your situation, for your background, for your nature of business, and for your what you're trying to achieve. So me just now naming accounts is kind of pointless, because again, if I now name an account that might be relevant to you and not to someone else, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what your industry is. I don't know what your company
especially that
structure is.
doesn't work like this. Yeah, even with our partner banks, if you just tell the account now, when people go there, they will be declined. Only if they click a special link or follow certain instructions, then they have a bonus, and it works similar over you. If you introduce, then it's possible. If they're not introduced, it's probably not possible. Yeah. So
Exactly.
It's pretty pointless to name accounts, and of course, it's very easy to open an LLC. It's not a secret that you can pay a couple of $100 or even less and have your LLC, but then you don't have any support, you don't have any expertise. Then you only know Wise, and then if Wise closes your account, you're there without nothing. Yeah, so sometimes it's worth to pay a little bit more to get good banking and good network to enable everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes, feel free to get in touch. We're always looking at your specific situation and then helping you to find the right banks. But yeah, from just telling me that your Wise account got closed, we're probably not going to give you the best possible advice. So feel free to get in touch.
Are you going to recommend offshore banking for private banking? I know of Bank of Georgia, but it's not possible to open up an account remotely. Going to fly there, but I want to know some other possibilities. So if you work with us, we can actually at Staatenlos open your private bank account in Georgia remotely. So if you don't want to have to fly there, send me an email. The email is here on the screen, xenia@staatenlos.ch. And then with Staatenlos directly, we also have offshore accounts in Dominican Republic and Cape Verde. And then Eric and Finstred and his team have global solutions, of course, as well.
I mean, we have over 30 different solutions, yeah. And I mean, honestly, we have to say Georgia is not offshore, yeah. Georgia is a nice exotic country with relatively stable banking and a good currency over the last years, but it's not really an offshore destination, yeah. So offshores are rather like little financial centers, mostly little island states like Cayman Islands or Seychelles or Vanuatu or Singapore. Georgia, I wouldn't consider really offshore. I mean, it's the Bank of Georgia. It's the biggest bank of the country. It's a nice option outside the EU. Until recently, without information exchange. Still now it makes sense. And you can open it remotely, like Xenia said. So it's a good option, especially for smaller clients, yeah, who have a couple of 10,000s they want to secure. But if you have millions of money, then it's definitely more worth it to go to Singapore, the Channel Islands, Switzerland, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe from my side. So do we recommend it? I mean, as I already said, I do recommend it for two reasons. One of them is if you already have an offshore structure, you definitely want to make sure that you're not remitting all of your profits back to your home country. As Christoph said, you can do that with a bit, but it's definitely not the smartest idea to build an offshore structure to protect your wealth and then just send it anyway back to your German bank account. So we do recommend it. You don't have to be there in person for 99% of the options, except you want a very specific bank account in the US. Sometimes you have to, but even that can be mitigated. So you can do that remote. Another good point to maybe touch on is that we also offer, or we do work with banks that are offshore, maybe in Jersey, or as you said, Christoph, there's many jurisdictions that offer you private bank accounts that don't only give you, multi-currency options to hold your funds, but where you can also build a credit score for expats. So this is an account that you can bring anywhere with you in the world. It's typically with one of the larger banks worldwide. And they offer you, even though you might be someone working remotely and traveling a lot, to build a credit score, which is something very powerful, because the question that we see a lot from people who are living this lifestyle is that they have issues getting credit. So if you, for example, plan to buy real estate in the future, or you want to just build a credit score, even though you're a perpetual traveler, yes, another good reason to open private banking. That's a big use case we see a lot. So not only the diversification when it comes to having alternative bank accounts outside of the EU for protecting your money or just for being diversified, but also if you want to have services that your German bank won't give you anymore, like credit.
That's a really important point because we often get questions of hey, I'm a perpetual traveler. I want to buy something. Where and how can I get credit? And it's really difficult to get that, just like you said. So if you know that you're going to buy something in the future, to Eric's point, make sure you set up the banking structure and the credit score ahead of time so that when you need the services, you can.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a big topic, there's multiple offers we have. So obviously we have the private credit when it comes to mortgages, where you just need a couple of months of trading history, and ideally, a good income is always helpful when you want credit for a house. But we also are able to get you US credit cards, or if you want a credit card or a line of credit for USLC, typically after 6 months of trading history, so 6 months of running your USLC, we can get you access to credit cards there as well. So if credit is a question mark, then feel free. That's another good, opportunity to speak to us and see if we can help.
Sounds good. I don't understand the next question. I don't know if you do. Hi all, which browser is good to find different banks? I don't understand it. Then I would just switch to the next one.
The best browser is scheduling a call, regardless of the browser, with Eric. And then he can tell you what's the best bank account. But obviously, this question doesn't make too much sense.
There you go. Let's see. For a personal account, I would like to learn more about where I could go outside of the EU to have an additional account that Germany EU can't get to.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you want, right? Like, do you want to have absolutely no reporting with, any European state? You might want to be in a non-CRS country where you want to go really offshore. If you just say, hey, I want to diversify, I'm not too worried about this. I just want to have maybe, a couple of multi-currency accounts or just a couple of bank accounts outside of the EU because I'm not too sure if I'm being treated that well here in the future, then, maybe Jersey or the UK or the Cayman Islands or Luxembourg or Switzerland can make sense. It really just depends on what you want. So I'm sorry that I'm always kind of repeating myself here, but it really depends. And ideally, you just want to speak to us and tell us what you want to achieve and what your situation is and where your assets are and how much of those you have. And then we can probably tailor a good couple of solutions to you. But it's just very hard to generically answer these questions because banking is quite bespoke, and you just want to share as much information as possible with us on that survey and on the call. Ideally, not here in the YouTube chat, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's often also like a matter of perspective. It's generally not wise to just go to the non-CRS countries because there's very little countries left which are non-CRS but have stable banking. Most non-CRS countries are completely shit for banking. They're completely corrupt, war zones, whatever. So it's not the bank account you want to have for your assets. So it makes more sense to mitigate the CRS by, for example, residency and citizenship. Yeah. Get a new passport for banking, especially get a residency, a second residency, even if you live in Germany. Make like a Paraguay residency or a Thailand residency. Get like a utility bill there, a tax number there, and then open anything on this account. Because at the moment, especially outside the EU, CRS only counts on the address. It doesn't count on citizenship. Just get the address outside of your home jurisdiction, open the banks on that, and then you can still have your bank account in Switzerland or wherever else in a good, stable bank. Yeah, you don't need to go to non-CRS countries. That's very important to understand.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I think a lot of clients and also a lot of from your clients, we often help them mitigate this, I would say, golden triangle where they come and they want a bank which is super cheap and doesn't report to anyone, and then still gives them, all the products that they need. And typically it doesn't work like that. You got to just sacrifice one of those, right? So again, it's not often that straightforward, especially in global banking. So
and to break it down. To break it down, the CRS is the common reporting standard, right? So what people would need to understand is that's a global standard for exchanging information between banks. And what people want to do is they want to avoid that, right? They want to have questions like, here is the EU can't get to. I think what he's referring to is how can I avoid my account information be exchanged with the EU, for example? And you can do that by, like Christoph said, getting additional citizenships, which is expensive or takes a long time, or even residencies. Because if you have your residency card of another country, say Paraguay, with a utility bill with which you can verify that address, then the information exchange only happens with the country of residence, in that case with Paraguay, and not with Germany. So that's one way for our clients to avoid information exchange with Germany and the EU, which is based on the residency given to the bank. And by having multiple residencies, which it's completely legal for anybody to have multiple residencies, citizenships varies. As a German, you can have multiple citizenships. As an Austrian, you cannot. But residency is enough. So I think kind of to help the community understand the background of these questions.
Of course, but we also have to mention that like the CRS isn't that bad. I mean, of course, it's not the most advantageous thing if your home country has access to your financial data, but it's not like a very big mistake either if you do everything legally, yeah? So don't worry if you live in Germany and open an account in Liechtenstein or Singapore. It still makes a lot of sense. It doesn't mean that German authorities can seize your bank account directly. That's not possible. Information is exchanged only once a year, and only certain information is exchanged, not all your bank account history. And there's a lot of other loopholes. So if you really delve deep into the CRS, it's not that important. Yeah, most people are far too worried about it and its consequences. I would say for me, it's not even an issue at all. There's dozens of topics more important in banks than the CRS or not CRS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Next question. Nicaragua Pass is new in the game. I don't know if that's a new banking system. I don't know.
It's probably a Nicaragua passport. I haven't heard about the Nicaraguan citizenship program, but the nice development, as we see in banks, is there's lots of new countries getting started with golden visas for residencies, golden passports for citizenships. So, of course, that's a nice development. The more options we have, the better. Although Nicaragua is a problem, even a Nicaragua residency is often a problem because I think it is somewhat sanctioned by the US, and that makes a lot of trouble if you want to bank from there. Yeah.
Does it make sense to move ETFs and shares straight from an EU account to an offshore one, or will I have to cash out and send fiat?
I'll let Christoph probably answer a bit more about that, but in general, we do recommend that. So we have partner banks which will take your portfolio if it's still, on a brokerage account or with a bank in Germany or in the EU, and take that offshore. So you can just move that portfolio over. It'll just, it takes a bit of onboarding with the bank, obviously. That's more on the private accounts that I've mentioned, where you can also build credit. So some of our clients, especially the ones who hold large amounts of shares, we recommend them to move it offshore to jurisdictions like Jersey or the UK or even further. Reason for that is, and again, I'll let Christoph talk a bit about this, is because we recommend not having too much economic interest in your home country, just because that could, lead to issues down the line. So if you're actually having an offshore company and you're leaving your home country, make sure that you're cutting as many ties as you can, just to make sure that in the future you're not going to have any issues. So if you have a multi-million-dollar portfolio and you want to move it over, it's probably a good idea, and you don't need to move it to like a country you don't feel comfortable. Again, UK, US, etc. are great jurisdictions for that.
Yeah, you can still use a German bank account in itself. A German bank account, even German credit cards, won't make you taxable, yeah? But of course, it's not wise to hoard multi-millions of dollars on your German bank account. For example, myself, I still use German bank accounts quite a lot because they are not that bad for transactions. Germany is relatively easy in worldwide scale when it comes to transactions to other countries. I'm a big private equity investor. I'm invested in 50 companies internationally. They have to send always the money to other countries. Not a single time was I asked by my bank for the source of funds or any other things about the transactions. That would happen far quicker in other countries. But I don't use this German bank account to store wealth. At the end of the month, after all private costs and investments are done, it's basically $10,000 and that's it. Yeah. So for this, I can still recommend using European accounts in certain countries. But of course, if you want to keep your liquidity, then rather keep it offshore. So I'm probably approaching Eric very soon as well to give me a good offshore account. I mean, I have plenty of those in the US, in Georgia, in whatever countries. That was my hobby in the beginning of Staatenlos. Yeah, just going into a bank and try to open an account. So I still have like 25 accounts all over the world, probably closed by now. If you don't have liquidity, like I do, I don't have much liquidity. It's everything in private equity. Then of course there's other needs you have.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that in many countries. Exactly. For those who are very worried about COS, even though that might not be that relevant, as Christoph said, you can. I was recently doing that in Vietnam. You can still do that in Vietnam for the people who watch who are in Asia. It's a non-COS country, and you can just walk into any branch and open a bank account quite easily. So yeah, we do recommend that as well. But again, do you want to hold most of your funds in the Vietnamese system?
Yeah, and for a community to separate the concepts, right, you need to break up your banking in terms of what you want to use it for. You need and want bank accounts for your business that you can do transactions with, as well as privately, where you're easy to move money around, you can have transactions. And then you got to have bank accounts, like Christoph said, where you can store some of your wealth. And you got to separate the two. You need transactional accounts, and you need accounts where you're going to hold larger sums of money and secure your savings. And that can be done obviously with bank accounts, with broker accounts, because the next question is a broker tip as well. So what are you going to use the account for, A? And then you have CRS information exchange that may or may be of concern of you, but you also have the way that the account is legislated. So if you have an interactive broker account, for example, if you have that with a German address, you fall under German regulations. If you have the interactive broker with a Paraguay account, you are regulated differently and fall under different jurisdictions, and that can have benefits regardless of the information exchange. So it all matters what it comes down to. So
like a typical broker is, for example, Interactive Brokers is the biggest worldwide. It's not a bank in itself, it's rather only a broker, but it operates under different jurisdictions. And if you open from within the EU, you always get Interactive Brokers Island because you're regulated in the EU. But once you have a non-EU residency like Paraguay, you're more flexible, and you could do maybe Interactive Brokers US or Interactive Brokers Hong Kong or wherever else they are. That might give you certain benefits on asset protection, also trading, leverages, whatever. So obviously in the EU or in the US, we are more regulated than in other countries. Yeah.
So I think, Christoph, our community likes to use interactive brokers, Swiss Quote, but those are kind of the big ones, but we don't have a specific.
Yeah, I think interactive
There's
brokers
so many
is
options, especially most international big banks. Eric can introduce to, they have their own brokerage concepts as well. And it is really, of course, the point what you're doing. You're just buying a stock now and then it's not really relevant how the fees are. Yeah, but if you're day trading a lot, then of course every cent counts. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just touching on interactive brokers. I think this one is a really good one for quite a broad audience, because you do have very retail focused products, and you can just use it as a retail investor. You can have all the different currencies, you can cash out in all the different countries, but you also have obviously institutional accounts and active trading accounts, and you have margin, and you can actually open positions with derivatives on your stock holding. So it is a very, very good one that I myself use quite a lot. So yeah, also from our side, recommendation to interactive brokers.
What's the name of Eric's company? It's Finstride.
Yeah.
But feel free to email me, xenia@staatenlos.ch. We have a framework agreement with Finstride and Eric, and so you'll, and then they know that you're from our community, and
yeah. Maybe this is my time to say it again. So finstride.services is the website. Our Instagram is called Redomiciled, because there we take a bit of a broader look. So Redomiciled, follow us on Instagram. We also have a YouTube called Redomiciled. Hopefully we can link it all below, but I don't want to go too far here today. So yeah, feel free to reach out to Xenia.
Yeah, we'll get you guys connected. Do you do a Malta setup as well? Anything, basically, yes.
Well, we do my Malta setup, not ourselves, but we have partners who do it, and then certainly Eric can get good business banks for that Malta entity, since Malta is EU, but still considered a bit more shady for many banks. So that might help with Eric's services.
Yeah, so exactly for your Malta setup, go to Christoph, but we have the right banking partners. And what we see a lot is that, people don't go there only for tax advantages, but also for regulation. So in Malta, you have, a lot of gambling and, adult related businesses because it's just a better regulation. And then obviously you're finding yourself again in a higher risk industry where we can then help. So if you have a focus on Malta because of tax, perfect. If you have it because of certain licenses and regulation, then definitely come and speak to us for the right banking.
I intend to get myself a second passport and I'm totally willing to move abroad. Would be interested in the banking side of that plan, thinking that maybe I should look at another country. So just to preface this again with flag theory, the unique thing is that you can have a different passport from a different residency from a different banking. So the banking does not necessarily have to be in your country of citizenship. And then I'll see what Eric and Christoph have to add as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a practical question I get a lot as well. Like, for example, we do a lot of citizenships in Vanuatu. The nice thing is you don't need to wire the money to Vanuatu. You can wire it to Australia, which is much less of a problem. For many like German banks. So the other thing is, of course, some citizenship programs you can do completely in crypto. And we have basically a lot of options to do citizenship in crypto only, which completely takes out the banking part, even with like undeclared crypto, non-KYC crypto, how you call it nowadays. You can buy these passports. So that gives you a lot of options as well. But of course, sending money, big money, like several $100,000 to a certain jurisdiction, which is considered offshore, can be problematic from German banks. And then it might be wise to have like an intermediary account. So your German bank doesn't cancel your account for sending this money to this certain country. Yeah.
Okay, Xenia, when I set up my US LLC with your services, do you help with the banking setup as well? Yeah, we share a list of banking partners that we have with instructions of how to contact them. And in most cases, you'll first get in touch with like a client services team where you can submit basic questions. And if you're unsure of how to word something or what to say, you can check back in with me. And then you do the actual applying for the bank account, but we have partnerships with banks. And then, of course, also with Eric and Finstride, depending on your situation, and we can make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible.
Generally, it's not a big issue for most clients. Yeah, most clients are easily getting their accounts opened. Sometimes they get their accounts closed again, but there's other options. We have like 5 partner banks. We have a list of many, many other opportunities. And if nothing helps, we still have Eric and other partners as well. We are able to get a multitude of American business accounts at real brick and mortar banks for quite high fee. But as possible, I think Eric can do that as well, cheaper. Just hop on a call with them, yeah.
Which bank would you recommend for me as a perpetual traveler since I've just set up a US LLC in Florida through Northwest? Is Mercury the right one for me? I'm looking for something that's not Euro. For non-Euro accounts, there's Mercury, there's Relay, there's Revolut. I know Mercury is very popular. We don't have a partnership with them specifically.
The big problem about these US banks is with the like cheap LLC you just set up over Northwest, you won't get these accounts. Yeah, because you need a real nice address and registered agent address from Northwest you share with 10,000 of other LLCs. So you need a real address, and we offer that for $1,000 a year for our clients. You get like a real business address with a rental contract, and that's required by those banks, Mercury, Relay, and so on, and then you're able to get the account. And that's exactly the thing, like a cheap LLC doesn't always give you options. You might be able to open Wise, that's it. But if you want more accounts, you need a better setup, yeah.
I wanted to say that earlier when we touched on, when you said that don't open, a cheap LLC on the internet. It's actually, to some extent, a binary partnership, because we obviously do have, clients that come to us organically, and often then we actually replace their LLCs with your LLCs, because this is maybe where I can give some credit back to you guys. With you guys, you actually get a real address. It's a premium address in Florida. Not doing your pitch, but it really makes a big difference, because these very cheap LLCs you can find on the internet, every bank knows what's happening there. Every bank knows that this is just an LLC that you bought on the internet, and therefore they feel less control about you, because if you just open a very cheap LLC which has an address with 10,000 of others on the internet, they don't feel confident of giving you an account because that account could be used for fraudulent activities. So it's not, we can help you mitigate all the challenges that you have with your entity, but often it's important to start at correct. And if you plan your offshore structure, make sure that you talk to Christoph and the team and get the foundations right, because yes, we can deal with all the extreme problems. I mean, I've mentioned like the crypto example, but in the end of the day, it doesn't really help if your basic foundation isn't right, and if you're buying a very cheap LLC on the internet, you're just limiting yourself, and the money that you thought you've saved, you probably didn't, because it will not be good for doing business on a day-to-day basis when it comes to banking.
Correct. Yeah, not all banks accept these registered agent accounts. So, how to contact you for a bank account? Contact xenia@staatenlos.ch. If you're a client of ours, we have a list of recommendations. Or if you're looking for other solutions, of course, I'll connect you with Eric and as part of our community. What if the company has been around a couple of years, but there's been no flow of funds?
So, I mean, trading history is obviously connected to showing that you've been trading. So showing that you have agreements with your suppliers, agreements with your customers, as well as transactions. So I would say these are the three main points of proving history. So if you don't have any of that, we can obviously help you to set up the right agreements with stakeholders and clients. In terms of, having transactions, most banks do want to see, when you're in a higher risk space or when you are dealing with an enhanced due diligence process, they definitely want to see some history of transactions. So it's better to have it. But we can try help mitigate that as much as we can, because obviously banks also understand if a company is new and haven't been trading too much. We typically help with, as I said, showing these agreements, naming example clients, showing a website. If you don't have a website, we can write you a business plan. So there's ways to mitigate that. But of course, if you have trading history, it's better.
Yeah. Banks always need to verify your business. So who are you? What are you doing? How's the money earned? Is it a legitimate business? Because they want to avoid money laundering, illegal businesses. So always verify your business. And then banks also want you to verify you personally. Who are you as an individual wanting to have an account on behalf of the business? So those are the two parts you always have to verify, explain, and then have a story. And so, like Eric was saying, having a website, having Instagram, having a business plan, all that helps the bank verify that you're a legitimate business.
Yeah, I mean, many people are not aware of this. Yeah, I got a lot of questions. If I open a business account, why do I need to provide my personal information? Yeah, they don't get it. Or if they ask for a website, why should I tell the bank a website? I mean, for us, it's obvious, but many people don't understand that those banks have these regulations, and even without regulation, a natural interest to choose whom they bank with. Yeah.
Yep. Eric, is your service only for business or also for private? I think we've answered that.
Both. If you have any questions, I mean, always book the free call, right? I mean, you can't really go wrong with a free call. Always have a chat with us. If we can help you, we will. But yes, it's for private people, businesses.
So even for asset protection structures, as you mentioned, for trust, for foundations, you can probably have solutions as well. Or especially if there's a multi-layered, like a trust holding a foundation, holding an offshore entity, holding an onshore entity. I mean, there is the structures which can get very complex over 5, 6, 7 layers. And no normal bank will be able to help you with that. But Eric's banks might do that, yeah.
You can. You just need to. Sometimes it's funny. You're also just dealing with humans, so sometimes you just have to explain them that this is the structure it is, and it's just a bit. We have a bit more leverage because we know the people either from our time in London, or we know the people from working with them and bringing them a lot of clients. So yes, it is definitely more complex with those structures, but there is ways around it, either with the right banks or just with taking really the time to explain it to them. What is the ownership structure in the chain? Because what you guys probably don't know out there is, if you go and you just file an application by yourself, then typically there's just not that much leverage, right? You get an email, you say you've been declined, but we do work with people in the banks. We have good contacts there. So sometimes we also have more leverage in just explaining why the structure is how it is, as long as it is obviously legal and not, dealing with any sanctioned countries. We can typically get it across the line. It might just take a bit longer.
This is the same question. As crypto in trading or high-risk industries, does that apply if it isn't part of an actual business, but private investments? Yes.
So the nature of business applies mainly to your business, right? So if you want a business account and you're in a higher risk industry, then you are considered a higher risk customer from a business perspective. It doesn't really apply to private because, you're not allowed to do business transactions on private accounts anyway. Like sometimes you can do it and you get through with it, but we don't recommend that because typically your account will get blocked for it. So if you're doing business transactions on a private account, don't do that. When it comes to investments, we actually do see that as well. We do see some private bank accounts not willing to accept crypto related payments, even big ones, right? I had a JP Morgan account in London, private one. And even those guys were not really touching crypto. So if you were sending back from Kraken or Coinbase, they would just deny that transaction. So we do see that even with very big banks still.
It's not really a question about high risk. Either the bank is crypto friendly or the crypto bank doesn't want crypto or even closes your account for any contact with crypto. So it's really, if you don't have a crypto friendly account, get one. And you can get that one via Eric as well, of course. Yeah.
Correct. Holy cow, love that example with the farm in South Africa. Yes, that was a fun one. Eric, is your service in German and English possible?
Yeah, so as I said, the rest of my team is English speaking. We will add some languages. We get another account manager who will speak also Russian and Chinese for our, I would say, clients very much abroad. But so far it's German and English, and we also have someone who speaks Arabic. Aber ja, ich bin ursprünglich aus Deutschland, also immer gerne auch auf Deutsch.
Nice.
For international banking, you often need to speak English as well because the interfaces aren't even in German. So generally, as an international entrepreneur, you have some level of English, but if you're more comfortable in the call with Eric, you can definitely speak German as well, I guess. Yeah.
How can I cash out bigger Bitcoin amounts without Mika?
You just either work with an offshore bank that is crypto friendly outside of the EU, or you use our trading partners, either gateways or exchanges, or for large amounts OTC desk, which are outside of the EU. So we'll help you choose the right one depending on pricing, depending on what you want to do in terms of like where do you want to settle into, and then you can settle that into a bank account either in Germany or outside of Germany in the EU. So there's a couple of ways to do it, right? Either with a bank. So option number one is you have a bank that is crypto friendly outside of the EU that accepts crypto, or you deal with a proper trading desk, which we can help you set up with. That probably makes sense from 100K and above. But yeah, you just want to make sure that the entities are outside of the EU, and then you can settle that into a bank outside of the EU. But let's say you only have a German bank account and you have crypto and you want to do it outside Mika, then get a trading partner outside who then settles in fiat to your German bank account. Then it's also not Mika regulated because the transaction on the crypto happens outside of the EU, and for the bank it's not visible that you've been doing a crypto transaction, because you're just getting a transaction from a trading desk which deals with equities, which deals with FX, crypto, etc. So it's not very clear what you've done. Could also be that you just exchange a large amount of pounds, for example, to euros.
Or you get a second residency, which is outside the EU, and then you're not falling under MiCA regulations, even with some European banks, because they have to obviously apply MiCA to their European clients, but they don't necessarily have to apply it for their outside clients. So that can also be an option, get a utility bill tax number, etc. in Paraguay, for example, or other countries. That's a very good option to get out of the scope of MiCA, even while still living in the European Union. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the contact for Paraguay residencies, and it is the most popular option. It works with Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, all of the common crypto exchanges, so to speak, where you can then use your Paraguay ID to switch over the jurisdiction and not fall under EU MiCA. And now you're, like Christoph was explaining, separately. So a Paraguay residency is extremely helpful, even if you are still registered in Germany, just to help diversify according to flag theory. How long to open a bank account with you, Eric? Clients always want it yesterday, don't they?
It depends. Sorry, I'm always have to give the it depends answer, but it just depends. Do you want a private bank account? We can open offshore private bank accounts in a day. There's some which are a bit more complex. The ones you get credit with are definitely a bit longer. Here you're looking at like a week. Always depends on how quick you are as well. When we're talking about business, it really depends on what is your business structure. Do you have a US LLC and you're, a freelancer? Maybe a week, less. If you have a Seychelles foundation with a company in Hong Kong underneath and you're dealing in the adult space, then we're probably looking more at 3 to 4 weeks. So it depends, but typically in that first consultation, which is free, which you'll have with me, I'll understand the situation and I can give you a more concrete outlook on how long that can take. But generally speaking, the more higher risk you are, the more complex your structure is, the longer it will take, with the longest being probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks-ish, if you're obviously helping us to be quick as well with, filing documents quickly and answering our questions. But I would say somewhere between 1 day and a month, worst case 1 month, but then you would be really, really high risk.
Okay, we have just a few more. Dominican Republic, I'm assuming that's referring to me mentioning that we can open accounts in the Dominican Republic. Email me for more information. We have a direct partnership there with SETI, our partners, our Portuguese partners, and can make that happen for you.
I mean, that's a good example for this thing between you want a non-CRS account, but still a relatively stable country, yeah? So Domrep is not a typical offshore jurisdiction either, but it is comparatively stable. So we can still recommend having a bank there. And it's not like in a completely shit hole, like I would call many other countries in that area. So, it's a choice to do. It's relatively easy with little money, like $500, you can open the account if you fly to Santo Domingo. But again, if you have multiple hundred thousands of dollars, there's better options, yeah.
All right. What do you think about Nicaragua passport for banking?
We already had that topic. I already covered this. Nicaragua is partly sanctioned by the US, I think. So especially for American and related banks, it's very bad. I think the EU doesn't sanction Nicaragua, so that is still possible, but still it's not the best passport for banking.
Would a residency in Costa Rica or Panama work for diversification, ideally for both a US LLC and a personal account?
It works. We have to consider that Costa Rica and Panama both were on the blacklist of tax havens, and being on that list is very bad for banking. So if you're on that list and have a bank in many countries, you basically got cancelled. Now they're off that list, both countries, but they're still a bit more sketchy for many banks. So there's definitely better jurisdictions for having your banking compliance than those countries. But those countries were great for living, great for being tax-free on foreign income as a residency. So I often advise people to have like a multi-jurisdictional setup. Yeah. For example, you live tax-free in Panama or Costa Rica, but you still have an address and tax number from a more regarded country, which is more compliant, but you don't trigger any tax residency there.
Great. Is Charles Schwab a good to move shares in ETF? Not sure about taxes and Quellensteuer while living fully in Germany and paying taxes there.
Yeah, I mean, generally to open a Charles Schwab account, it's an American account. You might be able to open it on LLC, even if you live in Germany. Otherwise, I don't know if it's possible, at least not remotely, I think. But maybe Eric has more words on that.
Yeah,
but there's plenty of other American brokers where you have opportunities.
Yeah, I was about to say Charles Schwab is not the easiest. It's a very famous retirement account for US citizens. Again, you can, with a US company, open it. But accounts like Interactive Brokers, which are, I would say, more international and more friendly for people also living in better tax jurisdictions. Because, for example, interactive brokers is huge in Hong Kong, and places like this is definitely better. But yeah, for US LLC, you can open it. The question about Quellensteuer, I'd probably rather give to you.
Yeah, I mean, the withholding tax, that's also, I mean, we can shortly cover this. It's a big misunderstanding many people have. Many people think if they have a brokerage in the US, then this 30% withholding tax in the US applies to their capital gains. But that's not the case. Yeah, the 30% only applies to US interest and US dividends, but not on capital gains. However, what many people forget is the inheritance tax. If you have your money in the US on US brokerages, you fall under US inheritance tax if you die. And that can be a big problem. That can be mitigated with LLC, because you can structure the LLC in that way that basically it goes over to your successors easily without triggering anything. But if you have private personal accounts in the US, inheritance tax can be a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Why do I need a business account and not only a private account? Well, if you have a business, you should use it with a business account. You should not use your business account for private matters. And then you should also not use your private account for business matters, because in both cases...
I mean, we get the question a lot, yeah. And many people think they can just work with a personal bank account, especially if they're Germans, because in Germany you can be like a Freiberufler, like self-employed without any business registration. And then you basically use the private account. They think they can do it also in other countries. And that can work if you're very slow. It's actually how I started myself. When I started my business, I had the LLC, even in 2015. But I first used my personal German bank account because there was not much other options, yeah. And it worked for like a couple of months. And then my bank wrote me, stop using this personal account for business or we close down the account. So I stopped doing it. I still have the account. Yeah, they just want me, but many banks will directly close the account. So I was lucky.
Yeah,
and you can definitely do that if you earn like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 euros, have only like one client a month, one payment a month from like a platform or network. That's fine. Then you even don't need a business. That can work. But it works until it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then come to us and we open the right company with the right business account for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say you might have been lucky, because generally most banks do not want you to do business on their private accounts. Like as you said, if it's like a once in a while payment, then it's probably hard for them to detect. But especially outside of Germany, every bank will immediately close your account if they understand that you're doing that. Like, if you just have a Wise or Revolut account, the second they understand that, that's gone, and then you'll have issues ever opening these accounts again, which you probably shouldn't, because even though we've probably not talked too well about them, they're still pretty good banking options. They give you multi-currency options. They're very cheap. They're good for traveling. So don't risk getting banned on these accounts.
Yeah, and I mean that's the reason why there's so many bad reviews on the internet about basically every bank, yeah? Because people just don't understand their terms and conditions. They don't understand they cannot use a personal account for business. Then they do it, and then they get immediately blocked. And then, of course, they give a 1-star review and can't explain why they're blocked, but it's pretty obvious, yeah? So never just go after internet recommendations, because generally only people who are having these experiences post them, not the happy clients, yeah?
And that's why the US LLC is so popular, because that's a business structure that banks trust. And with the US LLC, it's still very easy to open up a business bank account. There's no point in setting up a business structure in some offshore jurisdiction where it's very difficult to get a bank account. So the importance of your business structure also is because that allows you then, depending where it is, to easily open up bank accounts. And that's why the US LLC is also so popular. It's affordable. It's easy to open up bank accounts for the business, and has lots of benefits, and tax-free if you're tax-free. Okay.
Yeah. Last question. Yeah.
Last question. Okay. Well, let me see.
That's a good question.
Okay.
What's basic information they should prepare before a call? Like, so Eric doesn't have to do very basic work with the client, so they're already a little bit prepared. Yeah.
It is a good question. To be honest with you, there's really nothing you need to prepare. Just, know your stuff, like know what your business is doing, know roughly your setup. That's it. So I wish I'd have a better answer on this, but typically we have that first call to really get all of that understanding in. So I would rather turn it around and say, don't worry about coming to prepared. Just if you ever think of having a call, just rather have the call with us. You don't need to be worried. This first call is really for us to understand everything. We're going to ask the right questions, but yeah, just know your situation roughly, and the rest we'll figure out on the call and then on the survey and over the multiple steps that I've lined out.
Yeah, I think some general tips is always be honest, especially with Eric, right? The banks, and understand that the banks need to identify your business. Is this a legitimate business? Is this doing actual business? And then who are you as an individual applying for a bank account on behalf of this individual? And then in general, also, we talked about differentiate between bank accounts, right? You have bank accounts for business purposes. You have private bank accounts for transactional purposes where you can easily move money. You have bank accounts where you can store wealth and protect your assets. So understand that banking doesn't equal banking. You can use it in very different ways. And that's why we are here to share about flag theory and help you guys understand how you can separate the accounts. So that those would be my closing remarks. I don't know, Eric, if you want to say something, and then I'll give the last word to Christoph.
Yeah, I mean, again, in terms of closing remarks, if you're ever hesitant, if you're not sure why your bank account got closed, if you have any questions, if you ask yourself, is this possible? Can I do this? Reach out to Xenia. She will get you in touch with me. And if you want to follow us for more broader content, follow Redomiciled on Instagram and on YouTube. And yeah, thanks for having me, guys, today.
Yeah, I have to admit, I really hate banks. Yeah, and I'm very happy that Eric takes over this part of banking introductions, because it was always a very topic which didn't really make sense for Startnews doing directly. Yeah, it makes sense for Eric, who specialized with a lot of banking partners and so on, but you really need to do it at scale, and it's a full-term business. I couldn't do any other consulting if I'm only specialized on banks, because generally you don't earn that much with banks unless we have the negotiating power. Their referral programs are mostly a joke, and you have a lot of effort getting clients into the banks. And then often, of course, it's like an ungrateful business, because people say, oh, you recommended this bank account, but I always say I don't recommend bank accounts. I just tell you options, what's possible for you in your certain situation. Yeah. But they said, oh, you recommended it, and then they lost money with it, whatever. So that's why I really don't like this topic too much. And I'm happy to outsource this work to Eric and many of our other banking partners. And I can only recommend, don't hold too much money on the bank account. Invest it in private equity, in real estate, in whatever else. So there's a lot to do. We cover a lot of the topics as well. But the money on the bank account doesn't belong to you. It basically belongs to the bank, and in the end to the government, because the government regulates the bank. Mm-hmm. So it's wiser to just keep what you need, and that's it. Yeah. So, but still, thank you for coming to this webinar, and I think we have a lot of nice things we have discussed, and get back to Xenia, get back to Eric, and get back to me for any other questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.